Hi, I'm Jeff. This is Tropical Plants at 53 degrees north. So today we're going to take a look at my Bougainvillea Brasiliensis. This is part 3 in a continuing series of videos talking about how I cared for my Bougainvillea and the problems that I had with it and how I tried to diagnose those problems. So today what we're going to do is it's kind of like a 5-month update on that plant, and we'll quickly recap what the first 2 videos were talk about its care needs again, and take a look at what the state of play is as it stands now, coming towards the end of August. So let's jump in. And we are in. So just before we reveal all for my Bougainvillea Brasiliensis, let's just quickly recap what happened in the video way back in March. Seems like years ago now. It's only 5 months since. So in part 1 we looked at what was going on with my Bougainvillea and discussed some of its care needs. Now at that point it was on the floor. Because that's near the door of my greenhouse, that can have an effect with the temperature. I was trying to keep it at a minimum of about 12 degrees Celsius, and the Bougainvillea in general prefer to be above about 10 degrees, but they will go down to almost freezing point. I wouldn't like to try it with a really hard frost, but they will go down to that level. Now if you think about where they come from, now they actually come from South America, but there are many Bougainvillea in the Mediterranean area, and that's where I first saw them, and they do get pretty cold winters, but obviously they get long hot summers, and that's something that we definitely don't get here in the UK. So the first thing that we looked at in part 1 was where it was growing. It was growing on the ground and kind of up like a trellis on a gable end of my greenhouse. It will be, let me think, that would be like an east facing side to the greenhouse. So it really didn't get a great deal of sun, but it was just about the best I could probably give it in the cooler side of the greenhouse. I didn't want it over on the warmer side because I think really a minimum of about 18 all year round will probably be a little bit too warm for it. I think they do like that drop either overnight or through the winter months. They prefer to be root bound. Mine was when I took it out of its pot, it was in a fairly tight root ball. I repotted it into a terracotta pot. It was in a plastic pot. This was only really like anecdotal advice that they prefer terracotta pots, but I have had plants myself that prefer terracotta pots. And at that point it was about 5 feet tall. It was about 2 feet tall when I bought it. It grew to about 5 feet, and it had pretty much defoliated, and the leaves that were remaining were looking pretty sorry for themselves. It likes bright light. That's one of the things that have continued to come up in some of the sources that I've researched it on. It had no pests. It possibly had a vine weevil. I did find an adult vine weevil under the pot at one point, but when I looked at the root ball, all was fine, but I give it a treatment anyway. So that was the state of play in the first video. In the second video, in part 2, what we did was we raised the pot so that it wasn't quite so close to the ground and near to the door, so that even if it was only 2 degrees, even 1 degree, any little bit of temperature difference can help. So we raised the pot, we raised it up off the gravel tray because they don't like to sit in water. We repotted it, we had a look at the roots. And the biggest change really, or what I talked about mostly in video part 2, was about the watering. And at that point what I was finding was it was really very sensitive to overwatering, and in fact I used a water meter to check to make sure that the watering was only done when it was dry, and I found in fact that it needed to be dry. This would have been, let me think, June this would have been, so this would have been about 3 months after part 1, and in June it's summer for the UK, but you can still get really cold temperatures, and we don't get very many long summer sunny days. It's a sunny day today, but they're few and far between. Yeah, with the watering, I was finding that I was having to leave it bone dry for almost a week before I watered it again, and anything more than that was causing it to wilt, strangely. But this is what happens with plants. They wilt whether they're underwatered or overwatered. So bring you up to date, and let's have a look what we're up to now. So this is, where are we now? We're about 2/3 of the way through August. So we're in late summer, but it's still summer, so we can still get some warm temperatures, but we can also get some quite autumnal temperatures. Definitely get some pretty dark days when the sun is behind quite a thick covering of clouds. So let's have a look at what it's like now. So there it is in the corner there, and you can see the clay pot. You might just be able to see that it's up on stones, so that we've got some good drainage there. We do have some bracts now, and if I just work my way up the plant, you'll be able to see what it's like now. So it's grown probably about 3 or 4 feet. We've got plenty of bracts. I only had 1 bract on it last year. Plenty of colourful bracts on it. Well, as you can see, I wouldn't say exactly that it's thriving. I don't think it would win any bougainvillea contests. And you can see from the leaves that they're not quite as healthy looking as they were back in the June video, in part 2 video. So I found that the watering has changed yet again in August. What I found this time is that it's just as sensitive to watering, but it doesn't want to dry out and stay dry for more than a day. So we've gone from it wanting to stay dry for about a week to now practically as soon as I can see the top of the pot is dry, you can see that kind of semi-wilt that's on it now, and it's ready for another water. So it's suddenly gone from me really holding back on the watering to me having to water it quite frequently, and that is literally from August. Nothing before then. Before then it didn't want that. Now that these bracts have come out, it wants lots and lots of water. Now clearly something isn't quite right for this to happen. If you go to the Mediterranean, you will see these bougainvillea plants all over the place, and I don't see anybody going out taking special care of them. So clearly there is something going on with this plant that's making it so that it's not as vigorous as it should be. Bougainvillea Brasiliensis is supposed to be a very vigorous climber. It's also supposed to be very fast growing, and even though it says that it likes full sun, you can have it in bright full sunshine, it will also do well in semi-shade, which is what it's got. It could be that the light levels just aren't enough. Maybe the humidity is too much, but again, when I think back to where I've seen them in some of the Mediterranean countries, they've got high humidity, especially the islands, the Balearic Islands. So it could be that it's just not getting enough light. Now what I've found is that quite recently, certainly through August, as the sun, it might be like late summer, but the sun is kind of ahead of the fact that we're late summer. How can I rephrase that? The nights are drawing in to the point that we've lost, a couple of hours off our midsummer's day already. The temperatures and the seasons kind of lag behind that, but they will catch up eventually. But in terms of light, its day length isn't as long as it would have been back in June and May time. So therefore, it's not getting as much in terms of hours in a day of full sun. So what I'm finding that I'm doing, not just for the bougainvillea but for the other plants, I am putting the grow lights on even though it's August, so that they will at least, even on a really cloudy day, they will at least get some really kind of bright light. Now these grow lights are really meant to be really close to the plants, but I've got them almost like fluorescent lights right up above. It does give, you can see from outside, it does give a really nice bright light, but probably nowhere near as much as if it was outside and in the sunshine. So that's the state of play at the moment. I don't know if you've seen these bracts close up. They are very, very attractive bracts. They're really nice colours, but as you can see, the leaves still aren't quite as healthy looking as they should be. So I'm going to give it a water now. I've not watered it for probably 2 days. I'll give it a water now, and we'll keep trying, and we'll keep moving things around and testing things and see if we can get it to put on an even better show than what it's doing now. Another thing it could be is maturity. Now obviously this is a small plant, and maybe the more mature it gets and the thicker the roots and the thicker the trunks and the stems get, then maybe it will be more resilient to the temperature differences and the fact that it's not absolutely ideal in terms of light conditions and maybe temperature conditions. But I'm looking at it as a success so far. It's better than it was last year. I'm pretty sure it's not got any kind of virus or disease. I think it is really the conditions. There is a reason why you don't see bougainvillea growing outside or inside in this kind of northerly latitude in the United Kingdom, and that is clearly because they just do not thrive in these areas, and I'm trying to do something here which isn't normal for this kind of location. But we're getting there. It's certainly, it makes me think of a Miltoniopsis orchid in terms of its watering needs. Not that it's the similar, just that it's as finicky and awkward as a Miltoniopsis. But we've got some beautiful bracts on there. It looks better in the greenhouse than not being here. I think the greenhouse looks better for it, and I'm quite happy with that for now. So that's the update on bougainvillea, and what I'll keep doing is I'll keep testing things, trying to do different things to give it better conditions. It may be I've got to move it. Maybe I've got to try and find a place where it's in more light. Maybe it's worth trying it in the warm side. Next time I prune it, I'm definitely going to take some cuttings from it, and I might try some cuttings in another place in the greenhouse and see how that works. But we'll get there eventually. My plan is that it kind of covers the entire roof up there, so that it provides some shade for some of the other plants, some kind of natural shade. That will be the plan in future. So that's it on bougainvillea for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please put in the comments if you have any experience with bougainvillea. Certainly if you have any experience with them trying to grow them in a place like this. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and for now I will see you on the next one. Bye.